Hi there, it's Bike Mike here. Today I thought we'd talk a bit about the camping gear that I usually bring on my bike tours. But since it's a bit cold outside today, it's about minus 20 degrees Celsius or 4 Fahrenheit, I thought we'd head inside our house instead and start up the fireplace. So let's continue the gear run through inside. In the previous videos we've talked mostly about the clothes that I'm wearing, but now we're getting into the more interesting stuff, such as my sleeping gear. And I think we're gonna start with my tent. So this is the Naturehike Cloud Up 2, and this tent I probably use for 95% of my nights of bike camping. It's a budget tent and it's priced just above $100. Meaning that it's about a fourth of what you would pay for a premium tent such as the MSR Hubba Hubba or the Big Agnes Copper Spur. You still get all the features of a premium tent, and the weight is just a little bit higher than those tents. Plus it comes with the footprint included into the price, and usually with premium tents you often have to pay extra to get the footprint. And no matter what tent you're looking into getting, I would definitely recommend getting the matching footprint. A footprint gives you a little bit of insulation from the cold that's coming from the ground, as well as it protects the underside of your tent from getting torn up from branches and small pebbles or stones. And you can always make your own footprint with stuff that you find at your local hardware store, such as painter's plastic. Just make sure to choose a lightweight material, since a lot of tarps weigh a lot more than you might think. The only bad thing I have to say about this tent is the color, and that the door is on the head side instead of one of the sides. If it were up to me, I would rather have the door on one of the sides, which would mean it would be a lot easier to get into and out of the tent. When you have the door on the head side, as you do with this tent, you have to sort of crawl into the tent and then make a flip before you can lie down. There are similar tents as the Naturehike Mongar that have side entries, but unfortunately that specific tent is a bit heavier than this one. The corresponding model weighs almost a whole kilo more than the Naturehike Cloud Up 2. Color-wise, light gray doesn't exactly make it great for wild camping. If I were to buy this tent today, I would opt for the more stealthy one that they now have, the Army Green version. That's supposed to blend in more with the surrounding nature. But since I do most of my wild camping here in Scandinavia, where wild camping is more or less allowed, the choice of the color of the tent isn't that important for me. So let's move on to the sleeping bags, and I actually have 3 of them to choose from, depending on what season it is. So if we start with the smallest one, this one is called the Aegis Max Ultralight Down Sleeping Bag. As you can see, this one is really tiny compared to my big 3-season sleeping bag. This compacts down really well, and I mainly use it for my summer tours. Its comfort rating is at 11 degrees Celsius, so I really want to make sure that it's a warm night when I'm using this, otherwise I might be a little bit cold. Let's move on to the sleeping bag that I'm using most of the time. This is also an Aegis Max sleeping bag. It's a bit bulkier than the last one, but I'm able to use this down to around 5 degrees Celsius. So I can mainly use this bag during the late part of spring all the way through summer and a bit into the autumn as well. And this one, as well as the first one, are down sleeping bags, so that's why they compact down to a really small size. So since the down bag is very compacted in the compression sack during the day, when I get to camp I like to take it out of this compression sack, fluff it around a bit, and then just leave it inside the tent for an hour or so before I get into it. So I make sure that it's really fluffy. Plus, when I get home from my bike tour, I always store my down bags in a big bag like this one. So you're not supposed to store it inside of the compression sack, because the down fibers actually get damaged when they're compressed for a long time. So instead I store it inside this well-proportioned bag here. And I have a similar bag for the other down bag, so I don't store that inside of its compression bag either. The third and final sleeping bag that I'm gonna show today is my 3-season sleeping bag called Haglöfs Taurius. And this one I'm able to use all the way down to around -5 degrees Celsius. This is not a down sleeping bag as the other two. This is made of a synthetic material, and that's why it's not as easy compactable as these two. So that's a big problem when you have a small pannier that you're trying to fit it in. So I'm mainly just using this when it's really cold outside, say when it's still snow on the ground. I maybe just use this a couple of times each year. The big benefits of having a down sleeping bag is that it's usually really warm and cozy inside, and it's also very compactable compared to this one. One of the drawbacks, however, is that a down bag isn't recommended to use in a damp environment. So let's say you're going out for a really rainy tour and you know it's gonna be really moist inside of your tent most of the nights. Then the sleeping bag is probably gonna absorb some of that moist, and when down gets wet it doesn't work as well as when it's dry. So if you're touring in really wet conditions, a synthetic bag might be better suited for those conditions. So let's move on to my sleeping pad. This one is called the Sea2 Summit Comfort Plus Insulated Sleeping Pad. Really long name, but it's also a sleeping pad that I can really recommend, especially when you're in colder climates such as up here in Scandinavia. So what's so great about this sleeping pad? Well, it's actually separated into 2 layers of a couple of 100 different small cells. If you're out camping and you get a puncture on the underside, you can still use the upper layer to sleep on and maybe fix the underlayer the day after. Another great feature about this tent is that between these 2 layers of cells you have a sort of membrane made out of down that keeps you insulated from the ground. And this sleeping pad has an R value of 5, which means that it does a really great job of blocking off that cold that comes from the ground and keeping you warm during the night. Another great feature of this specific sleeping pad is the valve system that they have on these sleeping pads. So as I spoke earlier about the 2 different layers of cells, each of these layers have their own valve that you can inflate and deflate the sleeping pad with. So you basically just blow some air inside of this valve, and for me it usually takes around 7 breaths to get it fully inflated. Later, if you want to fine-tune the pressure inside of the mattress, you can just press this little orange thing in here and you let some air out. And the morning after, when you're done sleeping on the pad, you just open up this valve and let all the air out. And within a couple of seconds, it's basically totally deflated. So you can just roll it up again. And the last two items I'm gonna show you may be considered as luxury items, but I really love these two and I usually bring them on all of my bike tours. We start off with the inflatable pillow that I'm usually bringing along, and this is also from Sea to Summit. It uses the same system as the sleeping pad. So you basically just blow some air into the pillow. Usually it takes around 2 or 3 tries to get it fully inflated. It has a really soft fabric here on the upper side, so it's really nice to have against your head. The same here as with the sleeping pad, you can just adjust it by pressing this turquoise button here to let some air out of the pillow. While some people think this might be a really unnecessary thing to bring on a bike tour and they just want to wrap up some clothes inside of a stuff sack, for me bringing along this one is really worth its while. It provides me with a really good sleep during the night, and as you saw earlier, it doesn't really take up that much space once it's compacted down in its little stuff sack. So I can really recommend this little pillow to bring along. And this is the final thing, and that is a Sea to Summit Thermalite Reactor sleeping liner. And what this does is that if you put it inside of your sleeping bag, it provides you with a couple of degrees more warmth during the night. But the thing I like the most about this sleeping liner is that when I'm off to my tours, I usually don't have access to a shower for a couple of days or so. So I'm pretty sweaty when I get into my sleeping bag. So if I'm just sleeping inside of this sleeping liner, I can just wash this when I get home instead of washing my whole down bag. It's not recommended to wash your down bag too many times, so by using this sleeping liner, I can really prolong the lifespan of my down bag. So that's basically all the camping gear that I'm bringing along on my bike tours. You can find links to all of these items in the description below. So what does your camping setup look like? Maybe you have a whole different setup than I do. So if you do so, please leave a comment in the comment section below, and I'm really looking forward to hearing from you. Maybe I can get some inspiration for the future. Otherwise, until next time, have a good one.